All right, beautiful people. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is August the 1st, 2022. Day 174 of year 4, reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1192. Today we're picking up on page 370, picking back up, 370, in the book of Wars Against Jehovah, chapter 46. All right, beautiful people. Father, help me get it together in the mornings with my time. Thank you. All right, y'all. All right. Page 370, chapter 46. Everybody, forgive me. Let me do my greetings. Tigma, Grand Rising, Set Apart Living, Grand Rising, Belinda Brown, Auntie, Audrey Shalom, Vinette Shalom, Anita, greetings. Jen, Grand Rising, all the way from California. All right, y'all. Facebook, anybody came in yet? They be like, Pam be on her own time. Okay, y'all. Chapter 46, page 370. Two vice gods had Suga, Brihat, and Visvasrij. Brihat and Visvasrij. Two vice gods had Suga, Brihat, and Visvasrij. Next to these, Suga's heavenly chief marshal, Atma, who had 4,000 marshals under him, and equally divided amongst them to command 1,000 million heavenly warring angels. Atma had authority over 30,000 generals and captains, to whom were allotted 2,000 million angels. Excuse me, let me get this water. Francis, love, power, and wisdom. Chief of the heavenly generals were Shahara, Vazyam, Suchi, Dev, Nasakish, Tavra, Wadka, Shan, Dor, Hudhup, Nikish, Hajara, Hawasagaram, Viji, Yatamas, Brahma, Goska, Fulowski, Meduhitri, Yaya Michma, Hai Javar, Duth, Labyam, Haigup, and Val Wiska. And these falsely assumed the names of the ancient gods and lords of thousands of years before. Excuse me. Suga had said to them, look, there's a few people around me that got sick. I'm like, look, yesterday I took some Mucinex just in case. I was like, I ain't got time for this foolishness. So Jeremiah stayed home from work today, talking about his head hurt. I'm like, you need to stay in your room all day. I'm going to slide you some Mucinex under the door. I'm going to juice you some juice with some grapefruit, and I'm going to knock on the door. Wait about 10 seconds, then you come to the door and get it. Give me enough time to get away. I ain't got time for this. Okay. Suga, verse 3. Suga had said to them, that my age may be magnified before the newborn in heaven. Ye shall also magnify your own names by taking the names of gods and lords who are revered in heaven and earth, for all things are free unto you. But unto none others do I give privilege to choose the name of the ancients. Suga then made the following his private counsel: Playa, Vazista, Cairo, Spinista, Visper, Eshon, Bagwi, Lotha, Brihat, Gaia, Semern, Nazwich, Yub, Sol, Don, Mungjo, Urvash, Spenta, Mayas, Vazista, and Vanati, and to each of them 10,000 attendants. Then Suga made two great captains, Varsa and Baktu, and he said unto them, 2,000 million angels have I allotted to go down to the earth, to the land of Vidu, to subdue mortals and have dominion over them permanently, and I divide the 2,000 million betwixt ye twain. But all other angels shall remain in my heavenly kingdom, and work for me, and embellish it and beautify my heavenly cities, especially my holy capital. Linda, shalom, shalom. Selah TV, top of the day, creator gang. Uncle JB, Grand Rising. Verse 6. Now when ye twain are permanent on the earth, and secured in the temples and oracles, ye shall survey all the lands of Vidu, and the cities, large and small, and all the people therein. And behold, all men shall subdue unto my two names, Sudga and Deus. And when a city standeth, wherein the people worship any other gods or lords, that city shall ye destroy, and all the people therein. City against city it shall be, man against man, for as I am the all-highest God of heaven, so will I be the God of earth and its Lord. And ye twain, in finding two cities to be destroyed, shall divide, one going with his angel warriors to one city, and the other to the other city, and ye shall inspire them against each other unto death. And when they are laid low, ye shall bring into the place to inhabit it my worshippers. Thus descended to the earth the two destroying captain gods, Varsa and Bakhtu, with their 2,000 million angel warriors, and they spread out over the land of Vidu, where were many kingdoms and thousands of cities. And they came to mortals asleep or awake, and inspired them to havoc and destruction for Sudga's sake. Verse 8. And there were laid in And there were laid in ruins in 12 years 4,000 cities, of which 37 were great cities. And after cities is a reference to letter V. So let's hop to the end of the chapter. On page 387, V says, great city in those days signifies with tributary governors and tributary towns. Where the city had no tributary town or governor, it was called simply a city. 1882 edition. All right, back to page 371, verse 8. I'll start it again. And there were laid in ruins in 12 years 4,000 cities, of which 37 were great cities. And chief of these were Yadam, Watacha, Savalaka, Hosit, Lumivi, Sitidar, Yigam, each of which contained more than 1 million souls, and some of them 2 million. In all of these, there were places of great learning and schools and temples of sacrifice, worship. In Sitdar, the roof of the temple was made of silver and copper and gold, and it had 1,000 columns of polished stone and 500 pillars to support the roof. The walls were covered with tapestry, painted with written words and histories of, The walls were covered with tapestry, painted with written words and histories of heaven and earth, and of the gods and lords and saviors of the ancients. Hey, your dad in the room? Yeah. Your dad in the room? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Within the temple were 7 altars of sacrifice, and 4,000 basins of holy water for baptismal rites. Within the walls of the temple were niches for 500 priests for the confession of sins and for receiving the money and cloth and fruits of the earth. Let me read that over. Within the walls of the temple were niches for 500 priests for the confession of sins and for receiving the money and cloth and fruits of the earth, contributed by the penitent for the remission of their sins. Through the central passage within the temple drove the king in his golden chariot when he came for sacrifice, and the floor of this passage was laid with silver and gold. In the center of the temple floor was a basin filled with water, and the size of the basin was equal to 20 lengths of a man. In the middle of the basin was a fountain throwing up water. On the east and the west and the north and the south sides of the basin were 4 pillars of polished stone with stairs within them, and the tops of these pillars were connected by beams of inlaid wood of many colors, polished finely, which were called the Holy Ark of Sud-Haga. On the summit of the ark was a small house called the Voice of the Oracle, for here sat the king's interpreter of heaven and earth, the reader of visions, and the spirits of the dead appeared in the spray of the fountain, sometimes as stars of light, and sometimes in their own forms and features, and were witnessed by the multitude. Within each of the 500 pillars was a sacred chamber for benefit of the priests communing with angels. In the east pillar was an opening from the top to the bottom, a slat way so the multitude could see through the pillar, which was hollow its entire height. This was occupied by the king's high priest or priestess, as the case might be. And this person had attained to adeptship, so that the angels could carry him up and down within the pillar, even to the top thereof, which was equal to 50 lengths of a man. And the multitude thus beheld him ascending and descending. In the west pillar was the library of the temple. I was just thinking about something. I'm just trying to connect my thoughts before I say anything about it. In the west pillar was the library of the temple, which contained a history of its important events for a period of 800 years, of the priests and high priests and of the kings of the city. Next to the temple, which was called Trista, stood the house of learning, where congregated the wise men and women skilled in philosophy and music, astronomy and mineralogy. Hold on. I think, let me just highlight this so I can come back to it. I got to look into it before I say something about it. I don't want to get it wrong. I think I know what this is. Okay. Let me read verse 12 again. In the west pillar was the library of the temple, which contained a history of its important events for a period of 800 years, of the priests and high priests and of the kings of the city. Next to the temple, which was called Trista, stood the house of learning, where congregated the wise men and women, skilled in philosophy and music and astronomy and mineralogy. The house was made of polished stone and wood interlocked, and in the front with 140 columns of polished stone and wood. Within the house were the skins and bones of thousands of creatures, ancient and modern, which were classified and named, and with these were books of philosophy and history, all of which were free to the public 1 day in 7. Next to the house of learning was the temple of death, dedicated to all kinds of battles betwixt lions and men, tigers and men, and betwixt lions and tigers, and elephants, and betwixt man and man. And so great was the temple of death that its seats could accommodate 300,000 men, women, and children. The temple was circular and without a roof over the arena, like a coliseum. But the greatest of all buildings in Sitdar was the king's palace, commonly called Temple of the Sun. This was also made of polished stone, and on the 4 sides had 800 columns of polished stone, and next to the columns were 50 pillars on every side, connected by arches 12 lengths high, whereon rested a roof of wood and stone, and yet on this was surmounted another row of 400 columns of polished wood, inlaid with silver and gold, and these were connected on the top by other arches 10 lengths high, and on these another roof, and on the top of this a dome covered with gold and silver and copper. That was one long sentence. Okay, so back up towards, all of that was verse 13, towards the bottom of the sentence, after the word, where it says on every side connected by arches 12 lengths high, after high is the reference letter W. On page 387, W says, A length was the length of a man, but as to how many feet and inches, we are in the dark. 1882 edition. Obviously, it was an average of a man's height at that place and time, so which is probably way taller than the average height of a man now. So I think like the average height of men now maybe like 5'8" to like 6 feet or something like that, maybe. But they was definitely probably way larger than that. In my studies, we're considered like pygmies of the original people. They were way taller. Okay, verse 14, back on page 371. Besides these great buildings, oh yeah, Jen, yes, get some sunshine and walk barefoot on the grass. That'll definitely help ground my body. So I ain't got time for nothing to be trying to attack me, right? I'm about to get my bitters out, all my stuff, and I'm a after the juice and stuff that I juice for my son, he gonna get some bitters too. I'm gonna do like 3 days of these, son. You need to do a whole round of these. Kick out whatever's going on. There's too many people in this house, especially little people. When little people get sick, we just can't have it happening. Everybody about to be juiced up. Verse 14, page 371. Besides these great buildings, there were 450 temples of darkness dedicated to the spirits of the dead. These were without any opening save the door, and when the communers were within and the door shut, they were without light. In the midst of these temples, spirits and mortals congregated, and the spirit, yeah, that's what I thought. Hold on. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna reread this. Okay. Besides these great buildings, there were 450 temples of darkness dedicated to the spirits of the dead. These were without any opening save the door, and when the communers were within and the door shut, they were without light. In the midst of these temples, spirits and mortals congregated, and the spirits taught mortals the art of magic, of making seeds grow into trees and flowers, of producing serpents by force of the will, of carrying things through the air, casting sweet perfumes and casting foul smells, of casting virus to one's enemy and inoculating him with poison unto death, of finding things lost, of bringing money to the poor and flowers and food to the sick, of entering the dead sleep, and of becoming unconscious to pain by the force of will. Shucks, we learned a little bit about this. It didn't give you details on how to do it, but it was talking about how it could be done when we was reading through the legends of the Jews, right? Towards the end. Matter of fact, it was that huge section that they had on Solomon, right? Because Solomon, according to that, he was very well acquainted with magic. Verse 15. Nor could any man or woman attain to be a priest in the temple of Trista until he mastered all the degrees in the temples of darkness. The angels of Sudga decided to destroy this city, and accordingly they inspired a war betwixt it and the city of Yadam, which was second unto it in magnificence, and possessed of temples and palaces like unto it also. Yea, but to describe one of these great cities was to describe the other as to mortal glory. 700 years had these cities lain in peace with each other, half a day's journey apart, on the great river Uvisij in the valley of Raja Wichta. I probably said that wrong. Verse 17. And the captain god Varsa chose one city, and the captain god Bactu chose the other city, and each of them took from their 1,000,000,000 angel warriors a sufficient number, and inspired the two great cities unto everlasting destruction, even as mortals turn savage beasts into an arena to witness them tear and flay each other. Even so sat these captain gods in their heavenly chariots, witnessing the two great cities in mortal combat. And when one had too much advantage, the angel host would turn the tide or let them rest a while, and then urge them to it again, holding the game in such even balance as would ensure the greatest possible havoc to both. Hebrew, shalom, Tabitha, blessings. Verse 18, page 372. 8 years these battles lasted, and hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children were slain. And when thus the great cities were reduced, the gods let loose the band of death, whose angel office was to carry poison virus from the rotten dead and inoculate the breath of the living, and then in desperate madness to make mortals fire their cities to keep them from falling into I'm sorry, let me read the whole thing again. Verse 18. 8 years these battles lasted, and hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children were slain. And when thus the great cities were reduced, the gods let loose the band of death, whose angel office was to carry poison virus from the rotten dead and inoculate the breath of the living, and then in desperate madness make mortals fire their cities to keep them from falling into other hands. And in 8 years, the great cities with their mighty temples were turned to ruin and dust, and of the people left, only the ignorant few, starving, helpless, wanderers, could tell the tale of what had been. Sudga had said, all knowledge amongst mortals is inimical. I don't know this word. Inimical. 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 I feel like Onimo, an enemy. That's what. Let me get back to it. Suga had said, all knowledge amongst mortals is inimical to the gods in heaven. Therefore, I will destroy all knowledge on the earth. And this was the same doctrine maintained by Tan, god of Japheth. In such manner proceeded the captain gods of Sudga over all the land of Vidyu, laying low all kingdoms and cities and places of sacrifice and places of learning. And in 100 years, the mighty people of Vidyu were reduced to beggary and to scattered tribes of wanderers. The great canals were destroyed, and the upper and lower country became places of famine and barrenness. And in the valleys and on the mountains, in the abandoned fields and in the wilderness, lay the bones and skulls of millions of human dead. And lions and tigers came and prowled about in the ruined walls of the falling temples and palaces. Nor were there left in all the land a single library or book or the art of making books or anything to show what the great history had been. Thus perished the Vedic language, the language of song and of poetry and of great oratory, save in a small degree, save as was preserved by the remnant of Faithists who had escaped through all these generations, still in secret, worshiping the Great Spirit. Hear ye next of Osiris and his dominions, and of Arabenia and Parsi and Hellas. All right, y'all, 47. Tiffany Hager, hey. Page 372, chapter 47. Osiris the false, on setting up a heavenly kingdom of his own and dominion over Arabenia and Parsi and Hellas, said, let Tan and Suga pursue their course in destroying. Mine shall be in the opposite way. Osiris the false said, 3 kinds of bad people I have found in heaven and earth. They are forever finding fault with and putting down what others have built up. They are most crafty in argument to find flaws of others, the inconsistencies, errors, and shortness, but there is nothing in them to build up anything in heaven or earth. The next bad man is he who findeth fault not only with all that hath ever been, but with all propositions designed for a new state of affairs. He is as worthless as the shaft of a spear without a head. The third bad man I have found is he who, seeing the faults and errors of others, harpeth not upon them, but plungeth into the work with something new and bold, involving himself and others in disaster. And these three have the great multitude, the world, to take care of. I alone am capable of destroying and building up. Oh, you're real confident. Verse 3, the non-resistance of the faithless hath ever made them dependent on the mercy of their neighbors in heaven and earth. They must be destroyed, and their doctrines also. In destroying their doctrines, I must give something in the place. I have labored to put away Jehovah and establish the Lord God. Now to put away the latter and establish myself as myself would take other hundreds of years. Better then is it that since Deus is cast into hell, I take the names Lord God and Deus and Creator and all such as are acceptable in heaven and earth. And after since Deus is cast into hell, there's reference letter X. Page 387, X says, here and in other places we discover that hell signifies a bound up condition. As, for example, if a city were in a state of riot, it could not go to war, nor yet war against other cities. When thus disorder has so far usurped a heavenly kingdom that they are in a state of anarchy, fighting, man against man, all bent on inflicting tortures upon others, the condition is characterized as hell. 1882 edition. Okay, back to page 372, verse 5. Neither will I rob them of their rites and ceremonies, but so add thereto that by the superior glory they will accept mine. Nor will I abridge mortals of their learning, but on the contrary, be most exacting and high in aspiration, for by this will I win the approval of the wise and learned. Mortals love idols, therefore I will give them idols. Male and female will I give unto them. Osiris then called Baal, Ashtaroth, and Egypt into his heavenly council chamber, and said unto them, 2 idols shall ye inspire mortals to build unto me, and one shall be the figure of a male horse with a man's head and chest. Guys, what is that? What is that? Is that my yoga mat? Take it upstairs on the loft then. Go do yoga upstairs. Neither will I rob them of their rites and ceremonies, but so add thereunto that by the superior glory they will accept mine. Nor will I abridge mortals of their learning, but on the contrary be most exacting and high in aspiration, for by this will I win the approval of the wise and learned. Mortals love idols, therefore I will give them idols. Male and female will I give unto them. Osiris then called Baal, Ashtaroth, and Egypt into his heavenly council chamber, and said unto them, 2 idols shall ye inspire mortals to build unto me, and one shall be the figure of a male horse with a man's head and chest and arms, and he shall point upward, signifying heavenly rest, and the other shall be the figure of a mare with the head and breast and arms of a woman. Let me read this again. 2 idols shall ye inspire mortals to build unto me, and one shall be the figure of a male horse with a man's head and chest and arms, and he shall point upward, signifying heavenly rest. And the other shall be the figure of a mare with the head and breasts and arms of a woman, and she shall hold a bow and arrow before her, and behind her a sword and a rose, signifying for righteousness' sake. And the male idol shall be called Osiris, and the female Isis. And after Isis is reference letter Y. Hop over to page 387. Y says, C plate 89, Isis, and plate 90, the false Osiris. It must be remembered that in after ages, say 200 years, mortals lost the above interpretation and called Osiris the savior of men, saying he was the son of Isis, the virgin earth. 1882 edition. Okay, so let's go to plate 89, go to the table of contents and find out where it is first. The plate of Isis is 569. Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know why. I guess I was half reading it. I don't know why I was thinking about Baphomet. I was like, wait a minute, that's not a horse. Because I was thinking about the breast. And I was like, no, that's not it. Okay, so plate 89 is on page 569, and this is the Isis. Okay, I'm going to show it to Facebook first. Get a little close so y'all can see. YouTube. Okay. And now I'll take a picture. Just in case y'all ain't got the book, so y'all can just gaze at it later. And then plate 90 on page 571, the false Osiris. What's that? The false Osiris. Okay. Okay. Back to page 373, verse 10. For wherein I assert myself creator of all the living, I must show unto men that I am male and female, which of a truth is the fountain of all that is in heaven and earth, wherein projection and reception are the sum of all philosophy, in which ye shall teach that to go forth is Osiris, and to rest in meekness is Isis, for which the ancients used the bull and the lamb, Taurus and Aries, of which I'm an Aries, right? Verse 13, for I was a globe, boundless as to size, and swift as a motion, and I put forth a wing for flying, and a hand for labor, by which are all things conquered and subdued. And beneath the wing I set the Lamb of Peace, as a sign of the flight of the defenseless, but under the hand I set the head of a bull, as the sign of my dominion. And I made heaven and earth with wings flying forth, bearing the serpent and the sun, square with the world and circumscribed, have I made all things good and powerful. And in man's hand I placed the key to unlock the mysteries of the firmament of heaven, and the power and wisdom and riches and glory of the earth. Into his hand I placed a club to slay the lion, or to subdue him. All right, and now to subdue him, we have reference to letter Z. Page 387, Z says, C plate 66, Tablet of Osiris, 1882 edition. Found on page 527. Y'all hear them upstairs. Plate 66, Tablet of Osiris. This tablet belonged to the Egyptians in the Mosaic cycle and was of the established religion of that day. Anybody ever studied Egyptology would be familiar with this. Egyptology is pretty interesting. It helped me understand a lot as I was transitioning through and being able to pinpoint where the different religions actually stemmed from, and even how the Egyptology stemmed from Sumeria, right? It's really, really interesting. It helps. Those are like pieces of the bigger puzzle, so you can see everything a little bit clearer. I think it's made my state a little bit richer as to if I had just went from the Bible like straight to Oahspe. I don't know, I may have kind of been lost on some things, but by actually going through all of those different ones, even studying Torah and Egyptology, and then looking into, who was reading the Anunnaki Bible, all those different things, they were little pieces of the puzzle, although a lot of it was fabricated. Now that I find out, but it made for a good story, but it's really helpful. It makes my understanding a whole lot better, I'll say. Okay, back to page 373, Book of Wars, powerful, yes. Verse 16, For I am like unto man, having created him in mine own image, and I hold the key of heaven and earth, and dominion over all the inhabitants I created on the earth. I am Tau, I am said, I am the light and the life and the death. Out of myself I made all that live or ever have lived. The sun in the firmament I set up as a symbol of my power. The stars and the moon and the things that speak not and know not are the works of my hand. Without me nothing is, nor was, nor shall ever be. Whoso goeth forth warring for the right is for me, and I am with him. Whoso goeth forth warring for the right is for me, and I am with him. With warriors I am a God of war. With the peaceful I am a lamb of peace. To do is of me, to not do is not of me, but of death. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, mercy for mercy, but force unto all things, with will to conquer, for in these I am manifest unto men. Sound like Christian doctrine. For in the beginning I created the world of mine own force, and this is my testimony, justifying force even with violence, when the greater good cometh to the greater number. Hereon hangeth my law, in which any man can understand, that had the faithers fought for righteousness, they would have long since mastered the world and subdued it unto their God. What then is the stratagem of gods, save by some means to reduce men and angels unto oneness in all things? When Osiris had thus addressed the three gods, he waited for them to speak. Baal said, This is a foundation. We have never had a foundation for men nor angels. Ashtaroth said, This is a head and front to lead the world. Egypt said, The wisdom of the faithless was in having a direct course. Osiris said, Then will I revise the doctrines of heaven and earth. I will not say this is for Deus, nor Lord, nor God, nor Osiris, nor Apollo, nor any other god, but I will give that which all say Jehovians can accept. For I will allot unto God all things, not defining which God or what God, but God only. The rest will manage in Ahoagden, my heavenly kingdom. Go ye therefore to mortals, and revise the things of Deus unto God. And if mortals question of the oracles to know who God is, say ye, He is Osiris to the Osirians, Apollo to the Apollians, Isis to the Isians. He is the creator, the master, the all, out of whom were created all things. he who created man in his own image, who dwelleth on the throne in heaven. But if they question further, asking if he is the ever-present, answer them, nay. And if they say, is he Jehovah, the great spirit, answer them, nay. For I will not suffer one faithless to dwell alive on the face of the earth. Boy, they serious about this. We gonna run the world. All right, chapter 48, y'all. Where we at? 42 minutes? Okay. In Hakwad and Parsi dwelt King Luthag, a man of great wisdom and kingly power. His capital city, Sarutz, lay on the border of Phoenicia and had 12 tributary cities, each city being ruled over by a king. A great drought came upon the regions ruled by Luthag, and being a king of benevolence, he sent inspectors. Hurry up. Mom, shalom.
You finished talking. This is corny.
Oh, okay, yeah. Verse 2, a great drought came upon the regions ruled by Luthag, and being a king of benevolence, he sent inspectors far and near to find a country of water and good soil. But alas, they found not what was desired. Luthag consulted the oracles, and beheld the angel Egypt came and answered the king, saying, send thou thy seer, and I will lead him. So the king sent for his high seer and told him the words of the oracle. The seer said, whenever the God touch thee, suffer thou me to touch also, and perhaps I can hear thy God speak. The seer touched the king in the place, and at once the God spake to him, and he heard. So it came to pass, the God led the seer into Egypt, which at that time was called South Arabinia. The seer knew not the country, and he asked the God. The spirit said, behold, the land of Egypt. Thus was named that land, which is to this day called Egypt. Okay, so when it's talking about the person, just in case you don't have the book, when they're talking about the person, Egypt is spelled differently. They have a U instead of a Y. So when they're talking about, well, behold, they use it interchangeably, right? But the person's name is Egypt, but when they're talking about the land, which we know is Egypt today, they spell it Egypt. And although sometimes when they're talking about the person of Egypt, before the change, when they refer to the land of Egypt, they spell it just like his name. I just noticed that while we're reading through it, and every time it talks about it. Okay, I'll read it again. Verse 4, page 373. The seer touched the king in the place, and at once the God spake to him, and he heard. So it came to pass, the God led the seer into Egypt, which at that time was called South Arabinia. The seer knew not the country, and he asked the God. The spirit said, behold, the land of Egypt. Thus was named that land, which is to this day called Egypt. Yes, baby. In a little while. The seer found the land fertile and well watered, and he returned to Parsi and informed the king. Thereupon the king commanded his people to migrate to Egypt, and they so went. In the first year 50,000, and in the second year 100,000, and for many years afterward an equal number. These things occurred in the 700th year of the reign of Darius and Horeb. And in the space of 200 years more, behold, the land of Egypt was peopled over with millions of people, for the drought and famines in countries around about drove them hither. Luthag sent his son to govern the land of Egypt, and he made it tributary to the kingdom of Sarutz. The son's name was Hasax, but it's X's, Haxax. I think it's Hasax. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. The son's name was Hasax, and when he was old and died, he left the governorship of Egypt to his son Bacchal, who broke the allegiance with Parsi and established all of Egypt as an independent kingdom. Bachal's son Goth succeeded him And Goth enriched his kingdom with great cities and temples and places of learning, and founded games and tournaments. Goth's daughter, Rebek, succeeded him and was the first queen of Egypt. Rebek still further enriched the great land with cities and places of learning. Thus stood the country at the time Darius was overthrown in his heavenly kingdom. And now for 70 years, the gods Osiris, Baal, and Ashtaroth in Egypt had not much power with mortals. And during this short period, the shepherd kings migrated into Egypt in vast numbers, and in sympathy with these and of a kindred faith were the followers of Abraham. I was just about to say, remember, the shepherd kings is Israel. Okay, I read it again, verse 8, page 374. And during this short period, the shepherd kings migrated into Egypt in vast numbers, and in sympathy with these and of kindred faith were the followers of Abraham. Jamia, shalom, shalom. And of a kindred faith were the followers of Abraham, the faithists, who also migrated rapidly into Egypt. Meantime, the kingdom had passed from Rebek to her oldest son, Hawan, and to his oldest son, Naaman, and his oldest son, Sev, and to his daughter, Arma, and to her oldest son, Hatha, and to his oldest son, Rotsag. And here stood the matter when Osiris resolved to revise the records of mortals and angels as regarded the history of creation by God, which he did according to his own decrees, which were as herein before stated. So it came to pass that through the oracles, King Rotsag bestowed upon the libraries of Egypt the histories of the creation of heaven and earth, with the origin of sin and the creation of man, the first of whom was thence after called Adam instead of Asu, adopting the Parsian word instead of the Vedic. And these records were the same from which Ezra, 3,000 years, Houston time, I think that's Houston, Eustin, Houston time. And after Houston time, it has reference number 19 down at the bottom. It says 3,000 years, Houston time afterward. Okay. I mean, it's the same thing, except for they put brackets around the, what you call the, you got the square brackets, and then you got the bendy ones. That's terrible. I probably shouldn't be teaching English to my children. I forget. I just forgot what they call it. But anyway, it's the same exact sentence down here in the reference, but it just have brackets around the rounded brackets. It's not called rounded brackets. I just forgot for the moment. But let's go back. And these records were the same from which Ezra, 3,000 years, used in time afterward, made selections and erroneously attributed them to the doctrines of the faithists, who were called Israelites. And in brackets is Israelites, but they spell it. Okay. So Israelites is I-Z apostrophe. Okay. It's capital I, lowercase z, apostrophe, capital Z, and the rest of the letters lowercase E-R-L-I-T-E-S. Then after Israelites, they have in brackets Israelites. I'm sorry, not Israelites. There's no L. Israelites. I-S-A-E-R-I-T-E-S. Israelites. Okay, so we've added an L over time, and we called ourselves Israelites. Okay, let me read the whole sentence again. Verse 12, page 374. And these records were the same from which Ezra, 3,000 years, used in time afterward, made selections and erroneously attributed them to be the doctrines of the faithists, who were called Israelites. And the records of the faithists were not kept nor permitted in the state records, but kept amongst the faithists themselves, for they were outlawed then, even as they are to this day, because they would not adopt the saviors and gods of the state. Rotsag's son Hiram succeeded him, and and Thamus, is it Thamus? It could be Thomas. Sometimes with an H is still pronounced Thomas, like there's no H. I'm going to just say Thamus, right? And Thamus, his son, succeeded Hiram. Thamus was a seer and prophet and could see the gods and talk with them understandingly. Thamus was succeeded by his daughter, Hannah, and she was succeeded by Hojax, who was the builder in the temple of Osiris, commonly called the Great Pyramid. Wait a minute. Okay, I know. Look. Parentheses. Thank you, Audrey. Parentheses. That's what the bendy brackets are called. Parentheses. Okay. Let me see. What's his name? He do videos too. Oahspe College University. Early this morning when I woke up, I saw he had posted. I knew this looked familiar. I was like, wait, I just read this. I didn't read it. I actually saw his, it was like a 6-minute video I shared. But he did a little breakdown of this. Yes, thank you. About the pyramid. Yeah, Oahspe College University. Thank you. I'm gonna share his video that he just did. I'm gonna share it. Y'all gotta watch it. It's only a few minutes. Okay, verse 13. Page 374. Rotsag's son, Hiram, succeeded him, and Thamus, his son, succeeded Hiram. Thamus was a seer and a prophet, and could see the gods and talk with them understandingly. Thamus was succeeded by his daughter, Hannah, and she was succeeded by Hojax, who was the builder of the temple of Osiris, commonly called the Great Pyramid, in honor of the prophet of Deus, the first mortal servant of Osiris, whose name was Thoth. Hojax named himself Thothma. Maybe it's Thothma, Thonis. Y'all used to me screwing up names, so. In honor of the prophet of Deus, the first mortal servant of Osiris, whose name was Thoth, Hojax named himself Thothma, Thomes, which is to say, God Thoth. For Osiris told Hojax, "Thou art the very Thoth reincarnated, and behold, thou shalt be the God of the earth." Thothma could hear the gods and talk with them understandingly, and to him, Osiris, through his angel servant god, Egypt, gave especial care from his youth up. At the age of 16 years, Thothma passed the examination in the House of Philosophy and in astronomy and mineralogy. At 17, he passed the Builder's School and the Histories of the 1,000 Gods. At 18, he was admitted as an adept in life and death, having power to attain the dormant state and to see without his mortal eyes and to hear without his mortal ears. At 19, he ascended the throne, it being the time of death of his father and mother. You know what? You can actually, as I was researching into yoga and stuff, right? And meditation, and as I began to meditate, I probably, not as long as my children are still young, and I gotta attend to my husband, right? I'll know, because people go into that, they call it like the dormant state, or adept in life, adept in life and death. You're able to reach a certain point in meditation where you can be in a meditative position and literally just like zone out in meditation for weeks at a time. And there are some people that can do it for months, but people who do that, they're not in like the hustle and bustle busyness of the city. They go off somewhere where it's nice and quiet. They do this a lot in like China and remote places and retreats and everything. But they actually get into this state of meditation, and when they come out, they have like great wisdom, right? They learn how to do these things. You can do this on a small, minute level as well. When you learn how to meditate, you literally just learn how to become one with the creator or whatever, and you can see and hear things like this. This is a real thing. I've never done it for this long, only for like a few minutes. And when it first started happening, I'm like, where in the world did I just go? Hold up. How a whole hour passed. You know, I literally just closed my eyes. But I was testing out some of this stuff. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, it still blows my mind. I'm still doing my research into that when I meditate and stuff like that. It's crazy. It's amazing, but it's like, it's almost like no words to explain what happened. You just gotta go in and test some stuff. Okay, let me go back. Let me read 15 over again. Thothma could hear the gods and talk with them understandingly, and to him, Osiris, through his angel servant god, Egypt, gave a special care from his youth up. At the age of 16 years, Thothma passed the examination in the House of Philosophy and in astronomy and mineralogy. At 17, he passed the Builder's School and the Histories of the Thousand Gods. At 18, he was admitted as an adept in life and death, having power to attain the dormant state and to see without his mortal eyes and to hear without his mortal ears. At 19, he ascended the throne, it being the time of the death of his father and mother. For because Osiris desired to use Thothma, he sent his destroying angels, and they inoculated the breath of Hannah and her husband, and they died by poison in the lungs. Osiris, through his servant god, Egypt, thus spake to Thothma, saying, My son, my son. Thothma said, I hear thee, O God. What wouldest thou? Osiris said, Provide thou a dark chamber, and I will come to thee. Thothma provided a dark chamber, and then Osiris, through his servant God, came to him, saying, Thou hast great wisdom, but thou forgettest thy promise. Thothma said, In what, O God? Osiris said, When thou wert in heaven, thou saidest, Now will I go down to the earth and reincarnate myself and prove everlasting life in the flesh. For many years, Osiris had told the same thing to Thothma until he believed faithfully he had so been in heaven and returned and reincarnated him for such purpose. And if we remember correctly, right, remember the reincarnation doctrine is a false doctrine created by the Druze. Craig Brown, good morning. Right? Okay. Thou hast great wisdom, but thou forgettest thy promise. Thothma said, In what, O God? Osiris said, When thou wert in heaven, thou saidest, Now will I go down to the earth and reincarnate myself and prove everlasting life in the flesh. For many years, Osiris had told the same thing to Thothma. Hey, girl. Hey, girl. For many years, Osiris had told the same thing to Thothma until he believed faithfully he had so been in heaven and returned and reincarnated him for such a purpose. And he answered Osiris, saying, Like a dream, it so seemeth to me, even as thou sayest. Osiris asked Thothma, What was the greatest, best of all things? Thothma said, There are but two things, corporal and spiritual. Osiris said, True. What then is wisdom? Thothma said, To acquire great corporal knowledge in the first place, and in the second, to acquire spiritual knowledge. But tell me, thou God of wisdom, how can a man attain to the highest spiritual knowledge? Osiris said, To come and dwell in heaven and see. Osiris said, To come and dwell in heaven and see for one's self. Thothma said, How long shall a man sojourn in heaven in order to learn its wisdom? Osiris said, 1 day, 100 days, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, according to the man. Thothma said, If one could leave the corporal part for 100 days and travel in heaven for 100 days, would it profit him? Osiris said, To do that is the master of death. Let me just do all of this. Okay. Verse 23. Thothma said, If one could leave the corporal part for 100 days and travel in heaven for 100 days, would it profit him? Osiris said, To do this is to master death. Behold, thou hast already attained to power of the dormant state. To control the course of the spirit, that is the next lesson. Hold on, baby. Yes. What? Girl, put your shirt down. Behold, thou hast already attained the power of the dormant state to control the course of the spirit. That is the next lesson. Thothma said, behold, O God, I have attained to the power of the dormant state, even as the magicians who submit to be buried for 90 days. Yea, and I go hence in spirit and see many things, but my soul is like a breath of wind and goeth at random. Osiris said, provide thou me a temple, and I will come and teach thee. Thothma said, yeah, that's Oahspe College University get into this part about the pyramids. Stephen, peace. Verse 25, page 374. Osiris said, provide thou me a temple, and I will come and teach thee. Thothma said, how to keep the body so long. Hold on. Yeah, I was reading it right. That's a question. Thothma said, how to keep the body so long that it be not damaged. That is the question. The magicians who have been buried long and being dug up and resuscitated find their bodies so damaged that they die soon after. Kind of like when you go into a coma. And remember, people who go into a coma, they are still, for the most part, from what I understand, they are still, they're alive and well. They're there. Their spirit is just having a hard time connecting back to their flesh, and their body begins to deteriorate, right? So this is a little bit of what I learned. Yes, baby. What? I ain't gonna put you in there yet because you ain't about to eat nothing yet. And if I put you in there, you're gonna start hollering because you want food. Okay, listen. Osiris said, provide thou me a temple, and I will come and teach thee. Thothma said, how to keep the body so long that it be not damaged. That is the question. The magicians who have been buried long and being dug up, resuscitated, find their bodies so damaged that they die soon after. Let her out, y'all. Let her out. Let her go out. So, it's okay. No glass right there. Let her go barefoot. Go. Go ahead, girl. It's good for you. Verse 26. Osiris said, thou shalt build a temple of astronomy and dedicate it unto Osiris, savior of men and angels, God of heaven and earth. Before we keep going, there's a picture right here, and it has a picture of Thothma, right? That's him, right here. This is page 375. Thothma. I don't know who them two dudes are with the stars on their forehead behind them. Okay. They probably told us. It's probably somebody in here. Okay. Page 376, verse 26. And it shall be built square with the world, east and west and north and south, and the observing line shall be with the apex of the hidden vortex, which lieth in the median line of the variation of the North Star, 2x. Let me tell y'all something. I'm studying like vortex and all that stuff. It sounds like right now it's just like blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what? So I got to keep reading it over and over again. I was like, I really want to understand this, right? Because sometimes I have problems with math. That's why we're going to get another math teacher to teach all this because we all need to sit and learn together. So I'm trying to put this stuff together. I was like, okay, Father, help me understand this. So I got to read things over a lot just to make sure first of all, I'm reading in context and I'm really understanding the basis of the story, right? So I'm gonna get it down. It may take me a couple years, but I'm gonna get it down, y'all. And it shall be built square with the world, east and west and north and south, and the observing line shall be with the apex of the hidden vortex, which lieth in the median line of the variation of the North Star, 2x. Verse 27, in the form of a pyramid shalt thou build it, measure for measure, I will show thee every part. And thou shalt provide such thickness of walls that no sound, nor heat, nor cold can enter therein, and yet thou shalt provide chambers within, suitable for thyself and for thy chiefs and thy friends who are also adepts. For I have also provided the earth unto heaven, and heaven unto the earth. And my angels shall come and dwell for a season on the earth, and my earthborn shall go and dwell for a season in heaven. Yea, they shall come to me on my throne, and behold the glories I have prepared for them. Remember, this is still Osiris the False speaking here, right? Although he's giving wisdom and going to show them some real cool stuff and how it really works. Just remember, this is Osiris the False speaking, and Jehovah allows it for a period of time, right? Let's not lose sight of that. Verse 29, nor shall my temple be exclusive, but open unto all who will pursue the philosophies of earth and heaven, for which reason thou shalt build it with the sun, moon, and stars, and it shall be a testimony unto the nations of the earth.
Maybe I got soap.
You got soap? It's a puddle of water out there?
Yes, on the slide.
You'll be all right. Go back out there. You will dry. Go back out. Go. Verse 29, nor shall my temple be exclusive, but open unto all who will pursue the philosophies of earth and heaven, for which reason thou shalt build it with the sun, moon, and stars, and it shall be a testimony unto the nations of the earth, that thou art the highest of all mortals, and first founder of everlasting life in the flesh. For as the angels of heaven can return to the earth, and take upon themselves corporal bodies for a season, so shalt thou master thine own flesh to keep it as thou wilt. For this is the end and glory for which I created man on earth. Yes, baby.
Daddy.
Go tell your daddy. Go tell your daddy. Go tell your daddy. Yep, daddy. Where we at? An hour. Let's read one more chapter. Okay. Chapter 49, page 376. Osiris then instructed King Thothma to drive out the land of Egypt all the faithists, especially the shepherd kings who could not be made slaves of. Thothma impressed an army of 200,000 warriors and drove off the shepherd kings, putting to death more than 300,000 of them. And from the faithists he took all their possessions, such as houses and land, and suffered them not to hold any mortal thing in possession, neither permitting them to till the soil, save as servants, nor to engage in any other labor, save as servants. And there went out of the land of Egypt to escape the tyranny of Thothma 3 million faithists, including the shepherd kings, the unlearned. And in regard to the faithists who remained in the land of Egypt, Osiris, through King Thothma, made the following laws, to wit: thou shalt not possess any land, nor house, nor ox, nor any beast of burden, nor cow, nor calf, nor shall thy people possess an altar of worship, nor temple, nor place of sacred dance. But a servant and a servant of servants thou shalt be all the days of thy life. But in thy sleeping place and in the sleeping place of thy family thou shalt do worship in thine own way, nor shall any man molest thee therein. Thou shalt not profess openly thy doctrines under penalty of blood and thy flesh, nor shalt thou teach more in the schools or colleges, nor shall thy children receive great learning. And of thy arts of measuring and working numbers, thou shalt not keep them secret longer, or thy blood be upon thee. And if thou sayest, behold, the great spirit, or Jehovah, the ever-present, thou shalt suffer death, and thy wife and children with thee. And if a man query to thee, asking, who created the world? Thou shalt answer, behold, God. And if he further ask, thinkest thou the Creator is ever present? Thou shalt say, nay, but as a man that hath finished his labor, he sitteth on his throne in heaven. And if he further ask thee, where is God? Thou shalt answer him, on the mountain Horeb in heaven. And if he still further ask thee, is the ever-present a person? Thou shalt say, nay, the ever-present is void like the wind. But there is one ruler in heaven and earth, even Osiris, who is the Lord, the God, Savior of men. Boy, let me tell you something. This is clearly the doctrine of Christianity, right? Because I found myself repeating a lot of this dumb crap. Just without saying the name, right? Just keep it the generic term, not realizing these are the words of Osiris the False, literally almost word for word. You'll see some of that in some of my older videos. You know what? But I'm going to leave them up. I'm going to leave them alone just so y'all can see. Y'all can see. Oh, my gosh. I read some of this stuff. I'm like, oh. That was me. But it now, some people don't like that I leave them up, but I think it's good so you can like see the progression, because most people won't really be like, yeah, I was caught up in some shenanigans. Most people, they just delete everything from off their channel and start it new. I mean, and that's cool, but that don't really, I realized, I mean, and I really struggled with pulling down all my videos, right? And I get this inkling, leave them alone, leave them up. And I didn't realize, because people was messaging me, because I mentioned a lot, I got to go delete that video. People message me a lot, and they be like, you know what, I'm glad you left it up, because some of those things, as I'm progressing and my mind is being blown, like I shared it with y'all, some things is kind of hard. I'm like, yo, I can't believe and I was the one preaching this, right? But they say, you know what, because a lot of people, when they come across those videos, they find themselves in that same place and they don't know what they should do. They kind of get stuck. It's like, has all this been a lie? Is there a creator at all, right? And they said that my videos that I left up, they're glad that I did, because it really is helping them through that transition period of waking up, right? And realizing that we have been the ones that have been caught up in the great deception, right? So, but I do still daily I think about this. I was like, I'm going to take it down. It's like, I don't know. But I'm glad I do, because even when I go back and look at some of my old videos, although I do a bunch of face slap, like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I'm just like, it helps me to see how far along I've come. Not that I've come so far, but I can definitely tell there's a difference from last year to today. I'm just like, whew. Yeah, Audrey said, I like that you left them up, because it's some stuff that I'd be stuck, and you really helped me with moving. You really helped me with keeping moving forward. Yeah. Bless the most holy, right? And we all, every day, like, look, first of all, I'm glad this came about when it came about, because I was really getting into, like, I was like really getting into the reincarnation thing, y'all. Like, the more I read about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad you caught me before I got too far. And I kept teaching this. Like, I was like, I can't believe, look, so we got to be extremely diligent and mindful, always be on guard and checking everything. That's why I was like, I got to check everything. Yes, baby. Hold on, she coming. She gonna let you out. Go ahead, go back to the door. Here she come. Okay, let me read verse 5 again. Page 367. And if thou sayest, behold, the great spirit, or Jehovah, the ever-present, thou shalt suffer death, and thy wife and thy children with thee. And if a man query to try thee, asking, who created the world, thou shalt answer, behold, God. And if he further ask, thinkest thou the Creator is ever present? Thou shalt say, nay. But as a man that hath finished his labor, he sitteth on his throne in heaven. And if he further ask thee, where is God? Thou shalt answer, on the mountain in Horeb in heaven. And if he still further ask thee, is the ever-present a person? Thou shalt say, nay, the ever-present is void like the wind. There is but one ruler in heaven and earth, even Osiris, who is the Lord God, Savior of men. Who else but doeth these things shall be put to death? Whoso boweth not unto Thothma, my earthly ruler, shall not live, saith God. These laws were entered in the libraries of Egypt, and also proclaimed publicly by the scribes and seers. And yet with these restrictions upon them, there remained in the land of Egypt more than 2 million faithists. And it came to pass that Thothma began the building of the temple of Osiris, pyramid, and he impressed 200,000 men and women in the building thereof, of which number more than one half were faithists. And these laborers were divided into groups of 12s and 24s and 48s and so on, and each group had a captain. But for series of groups of 1,728 men and women, girl, chill, there were generals, and for every 6 generals there was one marshal, and for every 12 marshals was one chief, and these chiefs were of the privy council of the king. And the king allotted to every chief a separate work, some to dig canals, some to quarry stone, and some to hew the stones, some to build boats, some to provide rollers, and others timbers, and yet others capstans. 2 places the surveyors found stone with which to build the temple. One was above the banks of the great river Egon, at the foot of Mount Hazekah, and the other was across the plains of Nuph, in the mountains of Aokaba. From the headwaters of Egon, a canal was made to Aokaba, and thence by the locks descended to the plains of Nuph, and thence to Gakir, the place chosen by the king for the temple to be built. And as for the logs used in building, they were brought down from the waters of Egon, even from the forest. Girl, wow. No, thank you. As for the logs used in building, they were brought down the waters of Egon, even from the forests of Gambotha and Rugzak. These logs were tied together and floated on the water to the place required, where, by the means of capstans, they were drawn out of the water, ready for use. As for the stones of the temple, they were hewn in the region of the quarries, and when properly dressed, were placed on slides by capstans, and then by capstans let down the mountain sides to the water, whereon they were to float to the place required for them. Girl! Verse 13. It's 20 verses, y'all. We're on verse 13. The floats were made of boards, sawed by men skilled in the work, and were of sufficient length and width to carry the burden designed. And at the bottom of the floats were rollers, grugent at the ends. Now when a stone was let down from the place of its hewing on the float, it was ready to be carried to its destination. And when the float thus arrived near Gakir, ropes made of hemp and flax were fastened to the float, and by means of capstans on the land, the float was drawn up an inclined plane out of the water, the rollers of the floats answering as wheels. Verse 14. When all things were in readiness for building the temple, the king himself, being learned in all philosophies, proceeded to lay the foundation and to give instruction as to the manner of building it. These were the instruments used by the king and his workmen: the gall, the length, the square, and the plumb and line. Nor were there any other instruments of measure or observation used in the entire building of the temple. And as to the measure called a length, it was the average length of a man after trying 1,000 men. This was divided into 12 parts, and these parts again into 12 parts, and so on. After the first part of the temple was laid, the builders of the inclined plane began to build it also, but it was built of logs. And when it was raised a little, another layer of the temple was built. Then again, the inclined plane was built higher, and another layer of the temple built, and so on. The inclined plane, which was of wood, was built up even the same as was the temple. Remember, they're building a pyramid, y'all. The width of the inclined plane was the same as the width of the temple, but the whole length of the inclined plane was 440 lengths of a man. And after that, we have reference letter AA. So when they get to Z, they start over again and they use double letters in the same order. Okay, AA. on page 387 says, 440 lengths of a man would be approximately half a mile. 1882 edition. All right. Verse 17 again. The width of the inclined plane was the same as the width of the temple, but the whole length of the inclined plane was 440 lengths of a man. Up this inclined plane, the floats with the stones thereon were drawn by means of capstans and by men and women pulling also. For 24 years was Thothma building the temple, and when it was completed, and then it was completed. But it required other half a year to take away the inclined plane used in building it. After that, it stood free and clear, the greatest building that had ever been built on the earth or ever would be. Such then was Thothma's temple of Osiris, the great pyramid. Jehovah said, suffer them to build this, for the time of the building is midway betwixt the ends of the earth. Yea, now is the extreme of the earth's corporal growth. So let it stand as a monument of the greatest corporal aspiration of man. From this time forth, man shall not seek to build himself everlastingly on the earth, but in heaven. And these things shall be testimony that in the corporal age of the earth man was of like aspiration, and in the spiritual age of man in an opposite condition of corporal surroundings. For by the earth I prove what was, and by man prove what the earth was and is let me read the whole sentence again. 20. It's the last sentence. Okay. Jehovah had said, suffer them to build this, for the time of the building is midway betwixt the ends of the earth. Yea, now is the extreme of the earth's corporal growth. So let it stand as a monument of the greatest corporal aspiration of man. For from this time forth, man shall not seek to build himself everlastingly on the earth, but in heaven. And these things shall be testimony that in the corporal age of the earth, man was of like aspiration. And in the spiritual age of man, in an opposite condition of corporal surroundings. For by the earth I prove what was, and by man prove what the earth was and is at certain periods of time. And that, my beautiful people, is the end of chapter 49, and it's the end of our reading for today. And we'll pick this back up. We're actually almost done. Oh, yeah. We'll be done with this tomorrow. Then we start the book of Leka. Yep. Okay, yeah, we'll be finished with this tomorrow. If I don't start telling some story that ends up being extremely long. Okay, yep. We'll finish this tomorrow. 77. All right, beautiful people. That is it. Thank y'all for hanging out. It is Monday, August the 1st, 2022, day 174 of year 4, reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1192. We read pages 370 to 377 in the book of Wars Against Jehovah, which is found in Oahspe, and we'll pick that back up tomorrow. Thank y'all for hanging out. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Tikva, did I say hey? I think I did. Did I say hey? I saw you making a few comments.
Oh, Scotland's wet. Well, it certainly doesn't look like it. Look, it's raining.
I think I did. I be forgetting sometime. Okay. All right, beautiful people. Miss Ann. Oh, Miss Ann, shalom. Lavon. Hey, girl, hey. I didn't realize you came in over here on Facebook. Okay. Let me check in, just see if there's any questions or anything. Okay. All right, y'all. That's it. No questions.
Can I end the video?
Sure. Why
Josh.
not? All right, y'all. Love y'all. May the Creator bless us all and continue strengthening us as we grow.
I'm gonna do the video.
And give us the strength to change what needs to be changed when we find out we might be a little bit off. Right? Don't be ashamed and don't be afraid. And don't let nobody push you into the corner and make you think you ain't supposed to change. This is what you've been teaching. Keep on teaching this way. Don't mess it up. Keep the party going. No, fix it. Or you going to pay dearly for that. You're going to have to fix it in the end. Right? So, yeah, everybody got locks. The whole family. All right, y'all. So with that being said, I love y'all. And I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace. All right, Josiah, you can